Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. My name is Jim, and this podcast is sponsored by NFLDraftFanatics.com. This episode is going to focus on the Week 7 matchup between Ohio State and Oregon. So we have two really good teams matching up against each other. So while the player boards might appear to be about the same size, let's give a shout out to Ohio State for having the 7 best draft prospects in this game. So I'll just read them out and then we'll start talking about the matchups. So the top 7 players from Ohio State: Donovan Jackson, guard; Quinshon Judkins, running back; Jack Sawyer, edge; Denzel Burke, corner; Tyleik Williams, defensive lineman; Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver; and JT Tuimoloau, edge. Those 7 players are ranked higher than Evan Stewart on my board. But this isn't just about where they are on the board. Let's talk about the game within the game. And let's start actually by talking about Evan Stewart. So Evan Stewart, I'm looking at a round 2 grade on him right now. And he's 5'11", 175. What I want to see is how often is he matched up against Denzel Burke, right? So Denzel Burke is likely going to be a corner that goes in round 1 of the draft. And if we see Stewart play well when he is matched up against Burke, that's going to do more for Stewart than it is going to hurt Burke, in my opinion, for several reasons. First of all, this at the very top, this draft class isn't going to have a lot of first-round grades. So it's going to be really easy for players to sneak into the back of round 1, and Stewart is going to be a wide receiver that's in that category. And really, one of the questions you would have to ask yourself is your team looking for, let's say, a wide receiver X, right? Like the guy you can put on the line, or you're looking for the slot wide receiver. Stewart's going to be the slot wide receiver, right? He's 5'11", 175. So he's one of the smaller wide receivers types, definitely the type of wide receiver that you move around a lot within the offense. If that's the type of receiver that your team is looking for, that more of that dynamic type, that would be how Stewart gets moved up the board a little bit. Okay. Another player to talk about is Josh Conerly, the offensive tackle from Oregon. So Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau are both likely first-round edges. So whichever one of them is matched up against Josh Conerly Jr. from Oregon, that's going to be really helpful for Josh Conerly Jr.'s draft stock to improve. As long as he doesn't give up sacks and he's showing he can handle the NFL caliber edges on his own, I think this game will put Conerly as a left tackle option, and we're talking about a day 1 tackle. So this is a game where Conerly can prove he's a day 1 pick. I currently have him as player 60 on the board, so we're talking like end of round 2, but this is, again, not a strong first-round class. So if a team at the back of round 1 needs a left tackle, Conerly, the grade from player 20 to player 60 in this draft class is going to be really close. So Conerly can definitely play himself into round 1 by having a really good game against NFL caliber competition. Another wide receiver much further down the list, Tez Johnson, wide receiver from Oregon. So 5'9", 160. So both Oregon wide receivers at the top of their player board are the smaller types. But Tez Johnson can definitely run. And how well does he match up against Burke? And in addition to that, does Tez Johnson return kicks? And if that's something that an NFL team wants, Tez Johnson is probably the type of wide receiver that needs to return kicks to make his NFL team. So let's pay attention to that with Tez Johnson. Let's give a shout out to some other Ohio State players, which would include Josh Simmons, Travion Henderson, Sonny Styles, and Lathan Ransom. So all of those players I listed are likely going to be taken in round 3. So definitely looking at them. Ty Hamilton, okay, 3 technique defensive linemen, likely going to be drafted on day 3. Davison Igbinosun, corner from Ohio State. Again, he'll be matched up against Stewart or Johnson at times. So definitely a game where either Ohio State corner, and especially the players towards the bottom of the draft board, can move themselves up by showing that they can win their matchup. Okay, a couple of other players to give a shout out to. Ajani Cornelius, right tackle for Oregon. So he's probably going to be one of the best 16 tackles in the class. Cornelius is a right tackle. And he's going to be matched up against Sawyer or Tui Molal. So definitely going to be a game for Cornelius to show what he can do against NFL caliber competition. Okay, Jordan Hancock, the corner from Ohio State, will also be matched up against the Oregon wide receivers that we've already mentioned. Jabbar Muhammad, the corner from Oregon, is going to be matched up against Emeka Egbuka. And last week, nobody could stop Egbuka, right? So let's see how Muhammad, the corner from Oregon, matches up against Egbuka, who's going to be probably one of the 4 to 5 best wide receivers in the country. So one of the questions to ask yourself with Egbuka, would you rate him higher than Isaiah Bond? So right now, to me, there is a battle for wide receiver 4 in this class. If you watch the podcast enough, I've mentioned them in some of the other matchups. Egbuka is also in that conversation. Right now, I have Bond as wide receiver 4. So Egbuka would be in that wide receiver 5 to 10 range. But again, Egbuka's got to keep playing the way he's playing for that to be a conversation. He has to put it on film that he can win his matchup no matter who you put against him, including NFL caliber corners like he's going to see in the Oregon game this weekend. So my name is Jim. This podcast is sponsored by NFLDraftFanatics.com. NFLDraftFanatics.com is the only interactive mock draft simulator. And what that means is that the fans are mock drafting against the picks of other fans. So as you go in and use the mock draft simulator, the players you pick move up, the players you skip move down. So if you do a mock draft today and then you come in a week later, the player boards will have moved because the fans that did the mock draft for any NFL team between the 2 times you've used the simulator have moved the player boards. So there's 32 teams. There are 32 player boards at NFLDraftFanatics.com. Every mock draft changes the player boards. Last year, NFL Draft Fanatics had 189,000 mock drafts done in their simulator. So all of those are changing the player boards literally daily by the minute. Okay. So please give their simulator a try. And if you have any questions on the players, leave questions either on the YouTube comments or find us on Twitter at NFL Draft Fanatic. There is no I in Fanatic on the Twitter feed for this. So we welcome the feedback. We welcome the engagement. This channel will have draft content every day. Right now, we're talking about player matchups. We will talk about top 50 players in other podcasts. We will talk about positional rankings, scheme fits for the player, and more. So thank you very much for watching. My name is Jim. Please like, follow, and subscribe on YouTube and Twitter. And remember, every day is draft day if you have the right attitude. My name is Jim. On behalf of NFLDraftFanatics.com, thank you very much and have a great afternoon.